Hi, and good afternoon to you all. Thank you for being here present, accompanying us in our first webinar called Understanding the Real Meaning of Feminism. Okay, so I'm going to start by explaining to you all what is Girl Love and why we created this club in our school. So, Girl Love is a campaign of the United Nations Foundation, which helps advance girls' skills and rights and opportunities to be leaders. We were founded in 2010 by the United Nations Foundation, which means that today is our 10th-year anniversary. Our mission is to ignite the empowerment of girls by girls around the world. We're working in partnership with the United Nations to stand up for girls and speak up for programs that help them thrive and rise up as a community of advocates out to change the world for good. In 2010, women represented 3.1% in departmental governments, 18.2% in city governments, and 8.1% in Congress, and 10.8% in the Senate here in Colombia. So, with Girl Up, we're going to focus on building self-confidence and leadership skills on individual girls first to create young female leaders in our future. We care about different issues. Some of them are gender equality, gender violence, education, STEM for social good, and sports. Some of the tools that we will be using throughout the year in our club are advocacy, storytelling, fundraising, and organizing different activities to let you know about new topics that have to be discussed in our society. I'm going to introduce you now to our club vice president, Maria Fernanda Flores, who is going to explain to you the purpose of this webinar.
Hi, everybody. Girl Up CBSM Club decided to take initiative to truly understand the real meaning of feminism. In our current society, the feminist movement has been taken less seriously, when so many women to this day still struggle to be seen. That is why we decided to bring an amazing woman to bring clarity to this topic. I will let Isabel Ariza tell you more about her. Thank you.
Hi everybody, my name is Isabel Ariza. I'm the Girl Up CBSM Club Secretary, and I'm super excited to have you all here. Joining us today is an influential and amazing woman. When I say amazing, I mean it. She's an award-winning journalist, author of For the Love of Men, senior producer at Vox, and host of Positive Spin at NBC News. She regularly appears on national and international television programs to take action and provide a perspective on politics, gender issues, and other fundamental matters. Through her activism and commitment, she has elevated the voices of those who are not often heard. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Elizabeth Blank. Hi, Liz. It's so good to have you here today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Isabella, and the whole group. What a wonderful, powerful, intelligent, and impressive group of women. I'm really honored to be with you today.
Thank you so much. So before we start, I wanted to ask, what is it that made you accept our invitation?
Well, first of all, I loved that you reached out and that you we've never met each other, and I, had never heard from you or heard about you, although I am involved with Girl Up and I'm on the board. I didn't know that Columbia had its own chapter and that you were spearheading it. But I loved the confidence. I loved just being like, hey, we would love to have her be part of this really important, activity that we're hosting. So I loved the energy and the assertiveness, because that's how you get things done, right? You just have to reach out to people and hope for the best and believe in yourself. So I loved that, and so I wanted to meet you guys.
Yes, totally. Thank you. So without any further ado, I think we should get started with the event. So I will let Paulina start with questions.
Hi, Liz.
Hey, Paulina.
Okay, so we're going to start with the questions. Okay, so first of all, how would you define a feminist?
Well, it's actually a term that I think everyone should define for themselves, right? It's definitely something that is important to my identity, and I know it's important to your identity. And it was, but for a very long time, it was a label that I was uncomfortable with, because we briefly talked about this in the green room together. We both live in a society and in a culture where feminism has a bad reputation, where we have been told that feminists are troublemakers, feminists are somehow, masculine, as if that was a bad thing, are, lesbians, don't shave their legs, bra burning, all of these sort of stereotypes about feminism that discredit that movement and discredit that label. And so if your entire life you've been told that being something means that you're not wanted and that you don't belong and then people won't like you, of course it's not going to be a label that you're necessarily going to embrace. But as I just grew up in the world, and as a girl, I started seeing all of the ways that other girls were being discriminated against, and other girls weren't having the same kind of opportunity the same kind of opportunities as boys. And I myself was experiencing a lot of gender-based harassment in schools. I had to change schools because I was bullied by boys and sexually harassed, and actually even physically harassed by them. And my mother is a survivor of rape and incest. And so I saw the way that my mother, who is so strong and so resilient, had to live through a lot of pain in her life because of gender-based violence. And then I was facing all these obstacles and barriers, and I started wondering what a world could look like where I could just live my life, and where my mother could just live her life, and where women could work in environments that are free of this kind of violence, can walk down the streets and go do the things that they're meant to do in the world, right? Fulfill their potential as human beings without being encumbered by all of these different forms of violence and abuse that and stereotypes that we face. So I started really not just becoming warmer to the term, but also learning a lot about feminism and learning a lot about women's rights, and how long this fight has been going, and how, just it's even in the United States, it's only been 100 years since women had the right to vote. And that was white women having the right to vote, women of color, Black women, Latina women, immigrant women, migrant women. It took far longer. And so it's been less than 100 years. In a country like the United States, women have been oppressed longer than they've been free. Women have not been considered people. They were considered children who could not vote and participate in democracy for longer than they've been considered people who not only can participate in democracy, but also be a part of it. So, and run for president, God forbid. So yeah, feminism really means equality, and believing anything else that feminism means anything else is actually a part of why feminism is so important. Because women, there's nothing wrong with women being equal. There's nothing wrong with women being assertive. There's nothing wrong with women knowing what they want to do and doing it. There's something wrong with a society that curbs their liberties and their freedoms, and that then convinces them that it's bad to want that equality and that freedom when it's been consistently taken away from them.
Yeah, I totally agree. Thank you for your experience. I'm gonna pass on to Mafe, who's gonna ask the next question.
Was there a defining moment in your life when you realized that you were truly a feminist?
I think it was when I would look back at my journal entries when I was a teenager, and a lot of my journal entries would start with, "I'm not a feminist, but," and then I would say something very feminist. And my own mother, sort of would ask me, she wouldn't force me to be a feminist, but she would ask me, like, why don't you identify as a feminist? Why is that something that that feels like a bad word for you? So it was like a slow burning, it was sort of many different things. As I'm sure for you, Mafe, they call it these feminist click moments, where you'll be in a situation and you feel it in your body, right? You feel that something is just not right, and that this is not really the way that things should go. So there were many moments like that when I was young, when I was a teenager, and that I was just assumed to be dumber and to be less intelligent than the boys, when I wasn't at all. And I ended up getting, a master's at the London School of Economics, which is one of the best schools in the world. And I, in no way, shape, or form was dumb, but I was meant to believe that about myself, right? Or I was meant to accept that. I remember being called a slut for the very first time, and I actually didn't know what that meant. So I grew up in French in Montreal. So I was called a putain, which is, basically like a slut in French. And I didn't know what it meant. And I remember asking someone, what does it mean? And like, oh, it means you're a prostitute. And I just didn't understand. I remember just not understanding why, and having to follow that logic of, oh, because I'm a girl and because I kissed a boy, then I'm selling sex. It just didn't make any sense in my mind why I was getting called that, but he wasn't getting called anything. So I would see these double standards. And again, I think we all want to fit in. We all want to go along with others. We all want to have good relationships with other people. And especially when we're young, we are really being programmed and we're being told, this is not something you want to do. This is not right. You're being punished for doing things that are bad, and then you're being rewarded for doing things that are good. And so I think after a while, I started saying, wait a minute, that didn't feel right to me. And I started connecting all of those moments together, and then realizing I don't want my life to be like this, and I don't want other girls' life to be like this. And then further in my career, also realizing that this was bad for boys and for men too, that this was really a system, a belief system. It wasn't based in biology. It wasn't based in truth. It was actually based in lies and in imaginary beliefs that we've just decided, girls do this and boys do that. But when I started looking and researching, I realized that there was nothing biological or natural about any of these things. These were just inventions of our society.
Yeah, that's so true. I will pass the word to Paulina to ask you the next.
Yeah, Liz, that's totally a problem. I think that it's a problem everywhere because kids are taught these things since they're very little, and they grow up thinking that these are the things that they have to do, and that that's what it's correct, and when it's actually not. So yeah, I think it's very important to start talking to kids since they're small, since they're little, yeah, and teaching them these things so we don't end up regretting things when they're older.
Yeah.
Okay, so why do you think that there is such a big stigma around who we think is a feminist?
Because we are uncomfortable with women being powerful. We are uncomfortable with women being comfortable with power and being comfortable with who they are. Our entire society relies on women being insecure and not seeking power, right? So that's the status quo. That's there are many different kinds of status quos. There's some related to race and class, and the ones related to class is very, very rich people rely on poor people to stay poor and not seek equality and not seek to be equal, and have higher taxes on those rich people or have better wages, so that there's a reversal of power. And so power really defines our society in so many different ways. And the easiest way to convince someone who is powerful that they are powerless is to convince them that is just the way that things are, that is just nature, that they were born that way, and that contesting that will make you be rejected, or again make you marginalized, or be basically not accepted by the people in your society or the people that love you, right? So when we talk about gender, gender is power. Gender is, when you really think about it, gender is not that important, right? Like being a girl or being a boy, like there's some physical and, you know, biological differences, but those are pretty slight, right? It's like, it's between your legs, maybe like a little bit of hair is going to be different, the tone of your voice, and like, that's about it. But we have created an entire world that basically creates two doors. One is male and one is female. And then every single thing that you will do, from the clothes that you wear, from the sports that you play, to the kind of job that you'll have, the kind of personality that you will exhibit in the world, the role in terms of parenting that you're going to have, all of those things, the salary you're going to make, we have decided all of those things go along with this category of sex and gender. And what I'm trying to do with my work is show that gender actually shouldn't define any of those things for you, that people should be free to become who they want to be, regardless of that social category, right? We don't make that list of determinations based on, you know, the size of someone's nose, or how tall someone is, or the size of, right, like their earlobes. But we have decided that gender, right, what you have between your legs, defines everything. And it doesn't, right? What should define what job you do, what should define what sports you play, what should define what you wear is who you are, right? It should be a personal and individual decision. And we actually benefit as a society when people fulfill their potential. And so what we do when we say, no, this is for you, and no, this is for you, is that we take people off their paths. We take people off really like the spiritual, and I think the path that God has for all of us, and the potential that we have as human beings, it takes us off course. And so when you think about it, when you think about the stereotypes that we have for girls and the stereotypes that we have for boys, you know, we don't encourage boys to go into teaching, into social work, and you know, ballet dancing, for example. And we tend to not encourage girls to pursue careers in, you know, engineering or science as much as we do for boys naturally, or math. But what if the cure for cancer is, you know, the person that is going to come up with that happens to be a woman? And that she happens to be a girl growing up right now in the world who is being told, science is not, you should look at becoming a teacher instead. You know, that's kind of for boys. I'm going to give you, instead of giving you the science kit that you're asking for, I'm going to give you the Barbie doll, because you have to learn to be, you're nurturing, you're a woman, this is your role. We're actually taking her off her path, and we are all losing out as a society when we do that. And the same thing applies to boys. There are so many boys who are artistically gifted, who are very nurturing and loving, who, you know, I've done a lot of work with male nurses in the US, you know, men who want to be nurses and who love that kind of care. And they are constantly being encouraged to, or being ridiculed or embarrassed for seeking that as a career path. And they're constantly being asked, well, when are you going to become a doctor? When are you going to do, you know, when are you going to become the man, right? And it's like, no, like, this is what I want to do, and this is my gift to other people, and this is how I want to contribute to my society. And so when we take them off that path because of invented beliefs about what men shouldn't and should do, we all lose out, because we lose out at someone who could have helped thousands of people with the care that they have and the skills that they have and the personal and individual abilities that they have as a human. And so when we talk about gender and when we talk about feminism, really we're talking about freedom.
Yeah, I totally agree. And the worst thing is that it's not only men, because we are used to thinking that it's men the only ones that can be sexist. But the sad thing is that we women also are sexist sometimes, and we don't realize it because we are so used to those behaviors that we let them slide by. And yeah.
We all internalize everything, right? And even when you think about race, there are people in the United States who are Black who have internalized racism. Who, we've all seen this study, or maybe you haven't, but it's I encourage everyone to go see it. It's a study with children in the United States, and they are asked to choose a doll between a Black doll and a white doll. And the white children are more likely to choose the white doll and say that the white doll is prettier, but so were the Black children. And so you have Black little girls who have internalized that there's something wrong with being Black, that being Black means, again, we assign all of these characteristics that aren't true, and then they internalize that, and so they have that preference too. But that's not because, right, we're born that way. We're not born hating ourselves, right? Women are born wanting to make themselves smaller and wanting to, again, contribute less to the world than they can. We are brought up in a culture that signals to us that this is our role. And so it's very important for, all of us, including women, to be able to notice that and to ensure that we are deprogramming ourselves and each other from those beliefs.
Yeah, totally. And that's why these spaces are so important, so that girls that don't have this at home or in their communities, they have these spaces to learn about this.
Exactly. What you're doing is so brave and very, very important for more girls than you can even possibly imagine.
Yeah. So I'm going to pass on to Ahmed to ask the next question.
So, Liz, as we started talking about gender roles, how do you think these toxic gender roles affect the feminist movement?
How gender roles affected the feminist movement?
Yes.
Gender roles are embedded in our culture from the moment that we are born. Again, we have in the United States, I don't know if you guys have this in Colombia, but we have gender reveal parties where we before you're even out of the womb, before you're even born, people are already choosing different colors and, again, associating certain things with who you're going to be even before you've entered the world. And so gender roles are embedded in the toys that we give our children and the way that we raise them. For girls, it often means that we encourage nurturing, that we don't encourage competition, we encourage collaboration, and we might not encourage as much intellectual, game seeking and playing. And then for boys, it means that we actually squeeze all of the vulnerability out. So for boys, it often means that we encourage aggressive play, but we don't necessarily encourage collaboration or nurturing, right? There are a lot of boys. I mean, I wrote a book about masculinity, and in the book, I interviewed men and I asked them one really simple question, which blew my mind, and the responses, I really didn't expect the responses to be that visceral. But every man that I asked this simple question to had a response, and the question was, what was a toy that you were given what was a toy that you were that you really desperately wanted as a child, but that you weren't given, or that was taken away from you? And so for a lot of boys, that was easy bake ovens, anything that was like a kitchen related, like kitchen tools or a kitchenette. dolls, and even in certain instances, like there was one boy who talked about having this little shopping cart that he loved to play with. And one night, all of, his dad and all of his friends had destroyed it into pieces in front of him as a sort of, I think, pretty evil ritual of, of destruction and violence, showing him like that not only can you not play with this, but this is what happens if you do. So yeah, gender roles are everywhere. And by the way, this is new. If you look back, if you want to know how made up gender is, you just have to look at, how different, just look back in time and see how 100 years ago, for example, we didn't even have like toys for girls and toys for boys. It wasn't even until the 1980s in the United States that we had a girl aisle and a boy aisle at the toy store. It just was like not a thing. And so, and even before that, even if you look at the way that we dress, we think that high heels, right? A man can never wear high heels. High heels were actually invented by men, Persian men, because it was a really great way to, men who would ride horses. It was a way to keep your foot into the stirrups. And so high heels, 400, 600 years ago, were actually invented by men for men. And now we've decided high heels are for women. And if, a man wears high heels, it is like just, it can be really violent for a man to be walking around in high heels. He can get beat up. And that goes with makeup, the same thing. Dresses, right? Even like pants. Pants were invented basically when, again, it was because of horseback riding. Before that, men wore, if you think about gladiators were wearing dresses, basically. And so, yeah, these are all, we decide as a society, these are socially constructed ideas, and they seem very real and they seem inflexible, but they're not. And giving each other more flexibility and talking and being a little bit more open to the ways that people want to express themselves is again, just something that really benefits us all and lets us really understand each other better and ourselves better, right? So without all those things, who am I, right? Without all the frills of, whatever it is for boys or whatever it is for girls, like, who am I? And I think that's a really beautiful transformation to have. And it doesn't mean, I'm wearing pink. You can't see, but I'm wearing pink shorts right now. I have a pink phone case. I have a pink light. It's not lit up right now, but it's a flamingo. I love pink, right? And I wear skirts and I wear high heels and I wear makeup. But I choose to wear it and I'm cognizant of that. I don't wear it because I have to, I wear it because I want to. And I think that that's the goal that we want for boys and for girls.
Yes, that's so true. It's like how we undermine men's feelings by saying that boys don't cry when they actually can cry and it's all right
Exactly.
to do it.
And when you tell someone they can't cry, they will suppress it. And that's how we end up with a lot of problems in our society, not just for boys and for men, but also for the women and the girls around them. We have to think about how that, again, we kind of suppress assertiveness and confidence for women. What kinds of, negative impacts can downfall from that? The same thing, occurs for boys and for men too.
It's so sad that this still happens in our society. I'm gonna pass the word to Paulina.
Yeah, totally. And who says that man can't wear heels? Okay, so now that you talked about your book, I was just going to ask you something about that. So, what inspired you to write For the Love of Men?
Well, I was getting really annoyed because I would often be at feminist events or feminist panels or feminist conversations like this one. And I would be very excited to be speaking with very intelligent and exciting female leaders, but I got frustrated that these were almost uniquely female spaces, and that very often men weren't showing up at these events. And sometimes I felt like because men weren't showing up at the events, then we would be mad at men for, and talk about men in a certain way, and be very frustrated and sad and feel, abandoned. And so I thought, we need men in this movement, and we need we need everyone in this movement. And once I started doing research around men and talking to men, really, because I interviewed so many of them for the book, I spent 4 years writing the book, I realized that they were often hurting us because they were hurting. So because, as Mafe explained, when we tell boys that they can't cry, when we very early on cut them off from emotional vulnerability, when we, again, in sort of perpetuate the lie that girls are more emotional than boys, which, if you want to know if men are just as emotional, you should watch the presidential debate that took place in the United States yesterday between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. And, men are very emotional. Men are, people are emotional. We are emotional creatures, right? And so that's just, we are hardwired for connection, and we're hardwired for intimacy. And when you tell half the population that they don't need as much intimacy, that they don't require as much connection, and that if they show that kind of emotion, that there's something wrong with them, you create a society that looks a lot like the world that we live in right now, where a lot of men are in a lot of pain, and instead of being able to process that pain and become feminists, right, in their own right, and to do what you're doing right now, to say, hey, all these beliefs and all these stereotypes don't make sense to me and are hurting me. Unfortunately, we don't have men, enough men. I mean, we have some men who are talking about this, but it is not still a mainstream conversation. So what we have is a world where men are the propagators of 97% of violent crime in the United States, but pretty much across the world. We have men not just being more likely to be, again, perpetrators of violence, but also be victims of violence. And they're more likely to engage in gang behavior. They're more likely to end up incarcerated. They're more likely to end up in criminal activity, right? There are so many ways, and in the United States, we have huge problems with school shootings. We have problems of sexual violence on campuses and beyond. So, those are, again, coming back full circle to our conversation around power. All of those things are about power. Right? When a man feels like he's broken and there's something wrong with him, and and he's not fulfilling our expectations, then he's gonna get home and beat up his wife. He's gonna get home and yell at his children, right? Like, when we don't, when we suppress someone's emotions, it's always going to come out. It's never just, it's not like a faucet where you just we'll just turn it off. Men don't cry. Yeah, men just don't cry. Okay, just don't cry. Just don't be emotional. What do you think is going to happen, right? So we're in the midst of a crisis in the United States and honestly around the world. We are seeing, even in the way that ISIS recruits men to come into their movement. There are some women, obviously, but it's primarily men who are the most vulnerable to joining terrorist organizations around the world. They're often relying on these very masculine ideals of who they want to be in the world. And talked to Usman Raja, who's a man who works in London. He works with ISIS, ex-ISIS recruits. So he meets with, people who have been in ISIS and who want to leave, and helps them rehabilitate into society. And he says the first thing that he does when he meets with an ISIS recruit is deconstruct his idea of what a man is. Because very often that is what these groups really rely on to bring them in these movements. It's to say, you feel like you aren't important, you feel like you're broken, we're gonna, come here, you'll feel powerful, you're going to get women, you're going to get money, you're going to be the man that, this ideal of masculinity that is just as unattainable, by the way, as the ideal of femininity in our society. And so when we don't question that, we have people question themselves and then seek unhealthy means in order to find the answers to problems that shouldn't exist in the first place.
Yeah, totally. And like when people don't realize that when we force men to like not cry or to not express their emotions when they're younger, that is gonna affect our society in the future. Like they don't think that that's gonna happen. And also like we have the wrong perception. Like men think that when women are advocating for their rights and that feminism is like a competition, when it really is. Feminism is all about inclusion, and people still don't get that.
Yeah, and the reason why a lot of men are not receptive to feminism is because of their idea of masculinity, right? It is because they're told there's only a certain amount of power, and if you already don't have a lot, but you have to hold on to it, because if she gets any bit of it, then you're not a man. If you do anything that a woman does, you're not a man. And so that's how we pit people against each other within their own families, by the way, and within their own marriages, right? It's pretty ridiculous, I think, that many men feel threatened by, not all men, but some men feel threatened by a female partner that makes more money than them, when that just means more money. Like, it's just like, you have more money for your children. You get to like eat better foods and go on better vacations. Why would you prefer less money? But that's because of this social order, right? And the beliefs that we have, that they're so overpowering that they make us make irrational decisions that aren't in our best interest and aren't in the best interest of our children, right? To curb their desires and their dreams is also not in the interest of parents who also want to have a good life. Like, make sure that your children are pursuing what they're passionate about. They'll probably end up being very successful. Why would you prefer that they fit into a box? Why would that be more important than their overall success? So it's overpowering. It's everywhere, and it's all connected.
Yeah, and we're not like, I don't want to say a word that comes up like that, but like we don't take this like as an opportunity. Like, as you said, like it's just like something personal. Like I think that men don't want women to do that, like as you said, because they feel threatened by that, and they shouldn't. Shouldn't.
And if you're such a man and you're so powerful and amazing, then why would it matter? Like, it's actually, that's the question, right? You're so great and you're so strong. Then why would you be threatened by me being strong too? Right? Strength is actually not feeling threatened and not feeling like someone else, living their full life somehow takes away from you. It's such a scarcity perspective, and it's actually the weaker perspective. And so I want men to be strong. I want boys to be strong, and that means feeling excited and feeling happy when other people are strong too, not feeling like that takes away from you.
Yeah, totally. We're gonna let Mate ask the next question.
Hey, so your book, For the Love of Man, has such an amazing title. I was wondering how you came up with this. I personally love it.
Thank you. So I actually, first I thought of having a title of the book just be I Love Men by Liz Plank, because I felt like, to your point earlier, there's so many, things that we believe about feminism. There's so many things that we believe about, even talking about masculinity, somehow me being concerned for men and me writing a whole book dedicated to men is seen as me being anti-man, which again tells you a lot about the status quo and what people don't want you to talk about. And what people don't want you to talk about should always be the thing that you talk about, by the way. That was also the reason why I ended up really focusing on men in the book too, by the way, is that I realized that masculinity was a little bit like Fight Club. The first rule was that you couldn't talk about it. So when I would talk to men about masculinity, it was often something that they weren't comfortable talking about or had never thought about or didn't know if they had permission to talk about. So I was like immediately like, oh, this is really interesting. Like men are fine to talk about women and female empowerment, but then like, why aren't they fine to talk about how this affects them too? And so it's really fascinating. I was just hanging out with my producer, Ashley Bearden, and I was struggling with the name of the book. And I was like, I want people to know that like, this is a book out of love and out of compassion for men and for boys, not like a book attacking anyone. And so she was like, what about For the Love of Men? Like it was her idea. And I was like, oh my God, that's such a good idea. So it was all Ashley's brilliant idea that I cannot take credit for. And I think it was a good title. I think it like makes it pretty clear that this is about loving people, and this is about including everyone into the conversation, not chastising or telling people that they're like how to be men or how to do it, right? Like the whole point is like I don't want to tell women how to be women. I don't want to tell you how to be Mafe. Like only Mafe knows how to be Mafe, and I think individual men know how to be who they want to be, and that was the goal of the book, just freeing men from the same system that traps women.
Yeah, like when I saw
it's really amazing, and how your title just breaks like one stereotype that all feminists hate men when it's actually not true.
Yes,
it's brilliant.
Thank you.
And also like when I was researching for a speaker for a webinar, and I found your Instagram first because I was like searching through Instagram, and I saw you and I saw your Instagram username. That was what first like called my attention because you're called Feminist Fabulous, and I said like she's our speaker, and then I saw the name of your book and I thought like she's like the perfect person to say like what we need, like for people to understand that it's something about inclusion, it's a movement about inclusion and not letting people out.
Thank you. That means so much. I love that you feel the same way.
Yeah. So I'm gonna bring Isa back because we're gonna answer 2 questions that we saw in the comment section to wrap up.
Okay, great.
So Isa's back. And the first question that was asked by our adult advisor, our club adult advisor, and she asked, "Where can she buy your book?"
She can buy it anywhere. It's on Amazon if you want to do that, or I highly encourage you to order it from your local bookstore though, and if they don't have it, you can just call them up and say you want it. And but it's online. You can order it pretty much from anywhere. And it's also an Audible. It's an audiobook as well that I recorded. So if you like the sound of my voice and you want 11 more hours of it, you can do it that way.
Yeah, so yeah, we're gonna be buying the book because totally it's worth reading. Okay, and our second and last question was this one. And it says, how do you think we can form a stronger bridge between the POC feminists and the more privileged feminists, seeing as there is a strong divide between both groups when they should be one and the same?
Yeah, I think that's a really, 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 really good question. First of all, I think I'm white and privileged, and so I don't even think I should be answering that question. I think we should be listening to feminists who are women of color, who have always led this movement, who have always been at the front lines of this movement, to tell us how they would like the movement to go forward. And at the same time, I also, in my work as a feminist, I'm constantly trying to ensure that I'm actually doing feminism, which is intersectional feminism, right? There's no feminism without intersectionality. And so even in my book, for example, as the feminist movement is also approaching ideas of masculinity, it's just as important to really include many perspectives in in the conversations that we're having about these topics, and to talk about just the vast difference of what it means to be a white woman in America and what it means to be a Black woman in America is completely different, because gender is raced and race is gendered, but it's also completely different to be a white man in America than to be a Black man in America. So the experience of masculinity will be completely different, depending not just on race, but also gender identity, sexual orientation, religion, ethnicity. There are so many, whether you're cisgender, and we really haven't touched on those issues at all, of just beyond the binary, right? That and I start off the book talking about that by the way, gender is like not real, like it's a social construct, and even sex is a spectrum in the animal kingdom. If you actually look at just not just in the human species, but across many different other species, the way that we have studied the just bodies in general, and the way that we've understood sex and gender has been through the prism of often not women of color in fields like anthropology and neuroscience and biology. And so I quote many of them in my book, and I have always seen women of color as the leaders of this movement, and I think it's really important for white or for privileged women to be aware of their race, and that when we're talking about racism, we are talking about the plight of Black and brown people, but we also need to be aware of what whiteness does and how whiteness is incorporated in everything that we do, and how white feelings are always at the center of every room and every pretty much every space that we've ever been in. And so dismantling that should be, and I believe is one of the main priorities of the feminist movement as I see it.
Yes, thank you, Liz. To close this event, we want to ask you, who is your favorite feminist and why?
Who's my favorite feminist? That's a really hard question. There's so many. Probably the three of you. It's a tie between Paulina, Mafe, and Isabella right now, because you are just, when I was your age, I was not as entrepreneurial and brave as you three are. I know that you're going up against a lot in your personal lives, just like being an 18, 17-year-old girl in the world right now in 2020 must be already come with a set of challenges that I can't even imagine. But on top of that, you're adding this really important cause to your plate, and you're going up against a lot of grown-ups who might be telling you that you're crazy, or that you're taking on too much, or that you're wrong. And I'm really, really in awe of you for trusting yourselves to know what's right and what's true, and to go with your gut, and to believe in it, and to want to help and reach other people. And by doing so, you're helping more people than you can probably even imagine right now. So you all three are my favorite feminists right now.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Liz. And you're our favorite feminist.
Definitely.
You inspired the three of us to do this program.
I'm so excited. You'll have to keep me posted on what happens with the club. I'm really jazzed, and I can't think of a better thing to put out into the world right now, when there's so much pain and darkness, and I think apathy, for you guys to use this moment to really bring a lot of energy to this, and shed a light on this is so great.
Thank you, Liz, and thank you for accepting our invite, because I know that you're a very busy woman.
Good. No, keep being like assertive and being badass. It works.
Thank you so much. We're so glad that you came.
Thank you.
Everyone that attended our webinar, thank you for being here and for listening to us. Thank you.
And to everyone who attended the webinar. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did.
Bye.